In this first session, what we're going to be coaching to is this idea called defining reality. We'll get into that in a little more depth in just a couple of minutes, but I thought it would make sense, a good place to start, if we could spend just a little bit of time talking about the profession of sales in general. I don't know what ideas come to your mind when you hear the word salesperson. I've had some people tell me that when they think of the word salesperson, some of the images that float into their head are someone who's pushy, someone who's aggressive. Now, whether we agree with those things or not, whether they're fair or not, it really doesn't matter. Right now, we're just talking about what is. Our prospects know that whenever they're speaking with us, even if they don't understand all the financial complexities of what it is that we're talking about, here's something that they definitely know. It's our job to get them to buy. They know that at the end of the day, what we really want is for them to say yes. Because they know that that's our job, the protective walls go up. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody who absolutely positively needed what you had to offer? On paper, everything made sense, but for whatever reason, they just wouldn't listen to you. I think we all have. What we're going to be coaching to in this session is the idea of what I call defining reality. And here's why. It's designed to help people get out of their own way, to open up as to what's really going on. When we do that, we can have what I call an on-purpose conversation. Let's start all the way back at the beginning and see where this defining reality idea comes into play and how we can start becoming aware of it to help tear down those walls of resistance. Getting back to the initial idea that says our prospects, they know it's our job to get them to say yes. Automatically, fair or not, we're already lumped in with every other salesperson that they've ever met. And here's the deal. If we say it, it could be BS. They know that it's our job to show our products in the best possible light. Here's what they're used to hearing. Right up front, they're used to hearing all kinds of features and benefits. Here's what it is. Here's what it does. Here's why this is going to be great for you. The more that we pile that on, the more resistance we actually see. Now, this is interesting. When most people pick up a program like this, what they want to find out is, how do I get to yes faster? How do I sell more plans? How do I write more policies? What they find is that initially we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, how do we get someone to tell us no as quickly as possible? Now, before you pause this and say, wait a minute, what the heck? Let's think about this. If we can get somebody to tell us no as fast as possible, what does that really do for us? What does that mean? At the end of the day, for you and I, it means that we can spend more time with individuals who are open to the idea of saying yes. We think about this concept of defining reality. Here's the first one. If they say it, it's true. Imagine what that could look like. If, as you're sitting down with someone, either face-to-face or on a video chat or even over the phone, and you share with them that you've had a lot of these types of conversations, one thing that you found is that everybody looks into the idea of life insurance for a different reason. You're just wondering what theirs is. Now, let's stop right there. Let's break that question down a little bit further. Everyone looks into the idea of life insurance for a different reason, and I'm just curious, what's yours? Now, quite literally, here's what's happened. We're now inviting this individual to join a conversation about what we have as it relates to them. People do things for their own reasons, and not always for the right reasons, but here's what we do know. They certainly never do them for the salesperson's reason. We think about this concept of defining reality. Initially, our job is to find out as quickly as possible, why is this even worth looking into? As soon as we can really suss that out, as soon as we can figure out what makes this conversation worth your valuable time and effort and energy, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, as soon as they begin to tell us all the reasons why this is important enough to look into, they start to feel as though they're being heard. They also begin to feel that you understand right where they're coming from. Now, when we feel heard and when we feel as though someone understands right where we're coming from, either in our personal lives or our financial lives, those defensive walls, they start to go down. As we walk through this program, we're going to be coaching to ideas just like that. But before we delve a lot further, I wanted to share a couple of statistics with you. Did you know that less than 2% of all salespeople actually admit to having a business plan that they use as a daily guide? Now, you may have just heard me say that and you say, well, that's not me. But let me ask you this. If you and I were sitting down for a cup of coffee and I said, hey, do you have a business plan? 9 times out of 10, you'd say, yeah, absolutely I do. But if I took that one step further and I said, could I see it? That's where we get a lot of the hemming and hawing. Well, I don't necessarily have it written out, or maybe they don't have a business plan at all, or if they have a plan, it's really just a financial statement or a financial goal. But it gets worse. Not only can less than 2% of all salespeople admit to having a business plan, fewer than 10% of people in sales even follow a system. Now, let me ask you this. What do you get when you take no plan and no system? The answer is not much. When we think about this idea of defining reality, this is really a sword that cuts both ways. Of course, in the beginning and all throughout the process, we're going to be coaching to how to have an on-purpose conversation that really starts with having the confidence in our competence to ask really hard questions. But it also requires that you and I take a step back and we really examine, do we even have a business plan? Has it really been thought out? Are the decisions that we're making during the day, are they by design? You see, to amateurs, they react. Professionals respond. Your direction in most cases is a result of your perception or your mindset. You've got to be very clear on what we want the future to look like if we want to respond rather than react. Reacting in your business is like selling uphill. It's showing up every day to play the same old game, to talk to individuals about making the right financial moves, hoping that what we're talking about is what they're interested in. A lot of times people in sales, they fail. Not because they don't want it bad enough, and not because they don't try hard enough, not even because they're not smart enough. The reason most people in sales fail is because the system that they're using is literally setting them up to fail. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the idea of reacting versus responding. Reacting is an emotional reply to how we're feeling at that moment in time, whereas responding is considering what just happened, comparing it to what we want, and then making a specific decision about what to do next. I'll give you a simple example. A while ago, I had a chance to speak to a young man who sold accounting software in the manufacturing industry. And he told me this story about reacting versus responding that it just fits so perfectly. I know it's not our industry, but it fits perfectly. I've got to share it with you. And here's what it is. This young guy, we'll call him our hero, sells accounting software in the manufacturing industry, and business was really booming. This particular piece of software was very expensive. If he makes 10 sales a year, he's hitting mid 6 figures in income. But because it's so expensive, the sales process takes a long time. He was telling me about these 2 sales in particular. In the first one, he had a meeting with the CEO of the company, and the guy said, yeah, you know what? I think this might be a fit for us. And so he introduced him to the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, the IT guy. Typically in his sales process, it's made up of about 4 to 6 meetings, with the last meeting being the one where they actually sign the contract. Now, around meeting number 4, when they were really putting on the finishing touches on what they wanted the software to do, the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, the IT guy, he privately tells him, he says, look, I don't know how much you guys are charging for this, but I can tell you that we've looked at other companies and by far your product is superior. So our hero feels pretty good at this point, right? The meeting stretched on a little bit longer and a little bit longer, and they were really asking for a lot more than what they had initially been paying for, but he kept providing all of this added value stuff along the way because he was pretty confident he was going to get the deal. Now, come to meeting number 6, and they're sitting down, and if you can imagine, we got the CEO sitting at the head of the table. On the left side, you got the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and the CIO sitting right next to each other. And then on the right-hand side is our hero. And so right before the CEO is getting ready to sign the contract, the CIO speaks up and he says, the scope of this project has really, really changed since we first sent it out for bid. What I'd like to do is to take these new specs and send those out to bid just to cost justify the pricing. Our hero in this story, he lost it. He had done so much extra work for these guys, really building out exactly what they wanted. When they were making mistakes, he would point them out. He would say, look, you think you want this, but what you really want is this. He said, and by the way, this doesn't end well, but here's what he said. He goes, wait a minute. I can't believe that all the work that I've done for you guys, all the extra work, and he was talking to the CIO at the time. You told me that we were by far and above beyond better than any of our competition. And now you want to send this whole thing out for pricing again? I feel like you've been using me the whole time just to figure out what you guys want. Now, as you can tell, guilt rarely works in sales, and he didn't win that deal. That was reacting. There was something that happened. There was an emotional response to how he reacted. Now, here's responding. Similar situation. He was telling me it almost happened back to back. Similar situation. They get all the way through meeting number 6, and the CFO in this case, Chief Financial Officer, says almost the exact same thing. Hey, you know what? The scope of this project's really changed and all that stuff. We should basically send this out to bid with the new specs. Now, our hero learned a very valuable lesson from last time. Last time he got really emotional and he started reacting. This time he listened to what was being said, he thought about what he wanted to have happen next, and he responded. He took a deep breath and he said, well, you can certainly do that, but let me ask you this. This project's going to take about 6 to 8 months from start to finish once you hit go. Do you really have time to send this out to bid, or do you feel comfortable enough that what we've put together is a fair price? And he just let it sit there. The CEO picked up a pen and he said, no, we actually don't have time. I'm very comfortable with you guys. Let's get this done. Reacting versus responding. When we react, we don't have a plan. Literally, we're trying to build our business accidentally. Without a plan, you spend all of your selling day reacting instead of responding. We're showing up, we're hoping things will go well, without ever really taking a step back to take a look at the moves that I'm making and the things that I'm saying. Are they actually designed to help me get to where it is that I want to go? Or am I just doing the exact same thing over and over and over again? Reacting in your business, it creates this ceiling, and you see it all over the office. There's lots of activity one week, lots of phone calls, lots of conversations, and then you see people spending the next 2 or 3 weeks trying to take care of all that business that they just brought in. In the end, here's what happens. You've worked twice as hard for half as much. You spend 1 week generating all these new conversations, and then 2 to 3 weeks taking care of those conversations, nursing those deals just to get them closed. Whether they close or they don't close, or whether they get put on the back burner or not, or they move forward, ultimately what's happening is that you've spent a couple of weeks not generating new business. Here's what responding is. Responding, it assumes that you follow a plan and that you work a system. Now, a system is where the moves that you make are designed to take you from one step to the next on purpose. I don't know about you, but I've got a very specific definition that I use for running my business, and here's what it is. Specific, repeatable actions producing predictable, desired results. Let me give that to you one more time. Specific, repeatable actions producing predictable, desired results. Just because somebody wants to know more doesn't necessarily mean that they qualify to know more. Just because there's an aspect of the plan that I'm putting together for them doesn't mean that that aspect is important to them. People do things for their own reasons and not always for the right reasons. What we're going to be coaching to is how to tear down those defensive walls, how to help someone have an on-purpose conversation. We think about this idea of defining reality. It's really the ability to talk about what's really happening.